What is happening, people? Hey guys, cleaning up my boat today, and I got to thinking about all the questions that I get about my 10-foot jigging poles. And of course, this is the ACC Crappie Stick. It is green. This is the BnM Sam Super Sensitive rod, both in the 10-foot length. And I'm going to do the ACC Crappie Stick versus the Sam Super Sensitive and compare the two and try to walk you through some of the things that I like about both poles. So hey guys, stay with us. I hope you enjoy the video. Nice one right there, y'all. Woo, dog, Wild Life Adventures, that's how we roll. Let me start out by saying that both of these rods are 10 foot in length. Both have the Shimano Sienna reel with 6-pound test line, that being the very same. And I've got them both mounted in my on my tight lock rod holder here, just so we can get some comparisons. And so on the end of the rods, one of the things that I'm going to do, I'm going to add some weights to the end. I'm going to start at a 1/2 ounce and work my way up to about 8 ounces and let you see just how much flex that these rods have. Now, by no means, so I am not sponsored by either one of these rod manufacturers. I bought the ACC Crappie Stick first when I started jigging, single pole jigging, and then I bought the BnM rod. And like I said, I found some things that I like about each one of the rods, and as I go through those things, I'll show you some photos or some video clips of me actually catching some fish on the water, and I'll talk about, as we go along, about some of the differences. As you can see, both rods have a cork handle. They're both seated in the rod holder about the same. Both are 10 foot long, have 6-pound test line on them, and I just put these little I just tied these little wires on the end of them just so I could put some weights on them. So the first thing let's compare the flexibility of the rods. Now, so the couple of ways that you may fish with these rods: you may vertical fish, single pole, and when I say single pole, is holding the pole actually in your hand to feel the bite. Or you can put them in a rod holder such as this and fish a minnow or a jig straight down, whether you're using a 1/2 ounce weight or whether you're using just a split shot in a minnow, it doesn't matter. Or whether you're going to troll with these rods. Now, I will say, if you are trolling out the back with these rods, let's start with trolling. You're trolling with these rods out the back, across the back, or either out the side. Either one of these poles would work well. And what I do is, when I'm trolling, I'll put if I'm up front trolling and I have someone in the back, I put a 7 out, then I put a 10 out, and then I put a 12 out just past that. So I'm running 3 rods out each side of the boat, and then of course I've got rods in the back. That is why I want the difference in the poles. Or I may have a 6 and then a 10 and then a 12, just so I can spread them out. So these poles, either one would work well with trolling out the back or out the side. So right now, let's go ahead and add some weight to the end, and I'm going to clip this through the video fairly quickly so you can see this. This is with a 1/2 ounce weight, and you can see some of the differences. You can see the Sam Super Sensitive BnM rod. Let me try to get them still. You can see it's got a little more flex in it than this ACC Crappie Stick. That's the 1 ounce. As you can see looking down the rod, the Sam Super Sensitive rod has a little more bow in it back into the spine of the rod, whereas the ACC Crappie Stick is still fairly straight through the spine except for on the tip. Now let's look at that. Now this is the 1 ounce. You can see the differences. I'll try to get even. That is a 1 ounce weight here. You can kind of see the difference there. Now this is 3 ounces, so you can see that the ACC Crappie Stick is still has a fairly straight spine here, whereas the BnM rod has got a actual natural curved bow all the way back here. And see it's bowing back into the spine. You can see then that's 3 ounces there. Make a jump to about, we're getting ready to make a jump to 8 ounces. And you know, 8 ounce crappie is probably a good average. 8 to 10 ounce crappie, that's probably, you know, 9 to 10 inch crappie. Okay. Now I don't know about y'all, but when I see my rod being like that, when a crappie's on it, I get excited. So let's start back here at the butt, fairly straight out to about the first eye, and then you can see the BnM rod really begins to bow. Nothing wrong with that. Bow a lot sharper than the ACC Crappie Stick. You can see it's still got a lot of backbone. You see the difference there. It's the weights. I'll move around front, and you may be able to see that a little bit better. You can see the BnM rod is bending fairly well. When you're fighting a fish, you don't have 8 ounces of solid weight on it because the fish has some buoyancy, and I understand that. But when you break the water surface and pick the crappie up, if you're going to boat flip him, of course, you may want a little bit more backbone. So that's the heaviest weight I'm going to put on there is 8 ounces. And so as you can see that there's a significant difference in the ACC Crappie Stick. Being stiffer out towards the end of the rod allows you probably to flip a crappie a little easier. I didn't want to compare these rods till I fished with them for a while. I fished with both of these rods for over a year now, and just so I could have some time on the water with the rods individually, and I switch back and forth. You'll see me in my videos. I'll have different color lures on either one. I can fish either or comfortably because I've learned the rods. But if you're single poling with the rod in your hand, sensitivity is a major key in feeling a bite. So let's test the sensitivity, and I'll try to film the tip of the rod as I touch the rod, and you can get a visual idea of what it looks like. So don't know just how well we can see it, but on the sensitivity portion, you know, if I just bump that rod with my finger, you can see it moves just slightly, and that's very important for that to transfer down the rod. And of course, this is the BnM rod. And you can see that there is a slight difference in sensitivity if I just bump that just barely on the tip of the rod moving. Let me get it right up there so you can kind of see it. See, I'm just barely bumping that. Again, here's the ACC Crappie Stick, and I'm gonna just barely bump that with my finger so you can see it. And it's still fairly sensitive. Now the one thing I'll say about sensitivity, comparing these two rods, and I've actually fished in schools of crappie and put one rod in one hand and one in the other to see if I could feel a difference. And the BnM rod is slightly more sensitive than the ACC crappie stick. Sorry about that, ACC crappie stick, but that's just my now that's my personal opinion. Fishing with both of these rods for as long as I have, there's a slight difference in sensitivity, but not a lot. And I'm saying real slight in sensitivity. And so the second thing I'll say about sensitivity on these rods, if you are a minnow fisherman, especially in the wintertime when the bite is very subtle, if you're a minnow fisherman and you're vertical fishing out the front of your boat, you have a split shot on or whatever, and you need to see the tip of this rod move slightly, the BnM rod is going to be a better rod for that type of fishing. Where you have to see, because the flex in the tip of this rod is a little, it flexes just a little bit more. And you know, we've all seen crappie get the end of the rod, and you just see that tiny bit of flex. Now I've noticed that too. So if you're fishing minnows, you need something really sensitive to where you can visually see the tip of the rod. The BnM rod outfishes the ACC crappie stick. Not to say you won't catch fish on the ACC crappie stick, but if you visually want to see the bite, the BnM rod does a better job for that. So let's recap and talk about the different ways that you may be fishing this rod to see if it's applicable for your application. If you're trolling with these rods, side trolling or trolling out the rear, either one of these rods will do a great job for you in trolling for crappie. If you are minnow fishing out the front of the boat and you need to visually see the tip of the rod moving or to detect a bite, the BnM rod does a better job than ACC crappie stick. You'll be able to see those real light bites. You'll be able to see that rod tip moving all, real subtle, and you can set the hook. Not to say you won't catch crappie with the ACC crappie stick, but because the tip is softer on the BnM rod, it will outperform the ACC crappie stick. Now when it comes to flipping jigs and flipping a flipping a crappie into the boat flipping a crappie, the ACC crappie stick has a stiffer spine all the way out to the tip of the rod, and it's much easier to boat flip a crappie into the boat. If I have someone fishing with me that isn't as familiar with crappie fishing, I usually give them the ACC crappie stick if we're fishing, say, brush or vertical jigging brush or some type of structure. I give them that rod because it's easier for them to flip the crappie into the boat. I have flipped crappie with both rods up to 1.5 pounds. The ACC crappie stick outperforms because it doesn't have the flex to flip a bigger crappie into the boat, but the BnM rod will flip 1.5 pounds crappie into the boat. They get bigger than that, I'm gonna net them regardless. And the third thing we want to talk about is the weight of the rod, which is crucial if you are holding a rod in your hand. These rods, both of these rods basically have the same feel when you're holding them in your hand. The ACC crappie stick has a little bit shorter cork handle here, and sometimes I like to get up and put my finger on this, but they're both about the same weight in these rods here. So fishing with them all day is no problem. These are I probably fish these two rods more than I fish any rods that I have in the boat. Anyway guys, I'm going to end this video. I hope that you saw something in the video that may help you make a choice. If you're like me, I always like to put a rod in my hand to get a feel for it, about the length, about the sensitivity, It's difficult to buy a rod off of the internet and not be able to really hold it in your hand, and then you get it at home and it's not really what you was hoping it would be. And so I hope you saw something in the video that helps you make a choice on a particular rod or a particular length. And again, I'm comparing the 10-foot rod, ACC Crappie Stick, and the Sam Super Sensitive, which is the BnM rod. And both are great poles. You can't go wrong with either one of these. Just depends on your application of what you're trying to do in your application and how you're going to fish these rods. But both are good rods, and one is slightly better in one category and the other one is slightly better in the other category. So it's all up to your personal preference of how you mainly fish. Anyway, guys, you remember, God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you subscribing. Please comment. We enjoy seeing all your comments on the channel as well. Click that like button, hit the notification bell so you don't miss an episode of Wildlife Adventures. And as always, you remember, it's a wild life, and I'll see you in the water.